In Jamaica this week, a student was killed at a bus park in St. Thomas. Not in a school compound, not within the jurisdiction of any principal, any guidance counselor, any safe schools protocol. At a bus park. The child was a student. The violence was connected to the school world. But the system that exists to protect that child, its mandate ended at the school gate. That's the first rupture. The second is this. In Jamaica and across the world, videos of students fighting, being humiliated, being assaulted, being violated are being recorded, shared, and indexed permanently online. We've seen it with the student fights, we've seen it with teacher and student altercations, and years before social media made it a daily occurrence, Jamaica lived through a case in which sexually explicit footage of a minor was circulated peer-to-peer via Bluetooth. The content spread, the child was identifiable, and there is no law that could reach it. That child eventually became an adult, but that content did not disappear. That is a second rupture. Tonight on Lead Story Prime, we are asking two questions that this country has not answered. When a student is harmed beyond the school gate, who is responsible? And when that harm is captured, shared, and made permanent online, what does the law do? Because a generation of children now in Jamaican classrooms is the first generation with no offline past. Every single incident, every altercation, every moment of violation, every moment of even being the aggressor, permanently on record. We are raising children in the unerasable era, and the system has not caught up. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and this is Lead Story Prime, Beyond the Gate, School Violence, Viral Shame, and the System That Cannot Keep Up. We start off first with what is going on in Jamaica, looking at the reality of the background of this situation. And we first go to our reporter, Amoy Harriet, who on the ground from the horrors of Seaforth High, now dealing with the death of a student and others in police custody, the reality of what happens when violence passes the school gate.
A dark cloud now hangs over Seaforth High School in St. Thomas.
It's going on 3 o'clock and the school has dismissed early for students here at the Seaforth High School following Monday's deadly attack between a group of students. Now, this is the exact spot where the altercation began on Monday between the now deceased, who was a grade 8 student, and a group of about 3 grade 9 boys. Now, vendors tell us that they broke up the fight, they parted it, and the grade 8 student was placed on a minibus, which is usually parked right here outside the school. The fight then culminated in the Morant Bay bus park.
This is the establishment where the attacker allegedly bought the knife that was used in the fatal incident. The Jamaica Teachers Association says the police should take action against the operators.
I cannot understand how it is that a responsible adult would sell a knife to a student who is in uniform, and when you look at that student, you know it's a very young student. So, you know, it is something that I believe warrants some investigation, and where possible, you know, there needs to be legislative strengthening to treat with matters of that nature.
But they insist they're not responsible.
We never sell it to a school, Penny. Scalava, you know me all over. We not tell people knife. Knife, liquor, cigarette, 3 items. We are never select.
So we're currently in the bus park where Teen Hub is located. Now, this facility, we understand, is where students can come to get help whenever they have homework or other matters related to school. We understand it is a popular chill spot here in Morant Bay. But while seeking help, this was also, quite frankly, the crime scene of Monday's attack. This is where the fight culminated after leaving the gates of Seaforth High School on Monday, where the grade 8 boy was fatally stabbed. Now, since being here a couple of minutes, we've noticed police presence in the area, where police officers have been seemingly carrying out random searches of students' backpacks.
Right, me feel that way about said the two boys didn't kill him because he did ask my friend, but him wrong. All of them wrong.
These students are friends of the grade 9 boy who fatally stabbed 14-year-old Kaylin Doyle. They believe the attack was justified.
Well, I feel it's self-defense.
Oh, you feel that it was self-defense? What makes you say that?
Because there was an altercation, they fought already in the school and then go back again. And like yesterday, the boy come for him and he make him friend box up one of my friend them. So him go back a knife. Would I purchase a knife to stab him too? Of course, would I stab him?
We asked them why they believe their peers resort to violence to resolve their conflicts.
Them do it for look bad in front of them friend them. Like for them friend proud because some of them par with wrong company.
I am torn inside. I'm torn. Believe me, I am really taken aback because we never expect to see this happen. We could see it coming because almost every day they are fight over here.
Noel Brown has been a vendor outside Seaforth for nearly 3 decades. He's blaming the school administration for what he describes as poor management.
What about deans of discipline, guidance, counselors, resource officers?
Non-existent. The vice principal, no, it was the dean of discipline. And I mean, anything happen in this place, man. Anything happen in this school.
Angry. I've been here over 12 years and I've never seen it. Never. Them war, but I've never seen somebody kill a student like that.
Yes, man, you just sell something and look a fight broke up. You say, you better pack up, you know. Everybody run, go and watch a fight. Which means I know where the youth are praying at them head. Be a fight every day something. That's Seaforth High School.
Orlando McPherson is the driver of the minibus that transported Kaylin to what was literally his final destination.
I shed tears last night. I tell you this. Shed tears. But just life, you know, then just years old.
In the meantime, officials from the Education Ministry who visited the school today say they're providing psychosocial support to students and staff at the institution, as well as the family of the victim.
And we also want to look at, in coming days, not immediately, but in another week or so, sit with our administration to look at how we're implementing our HFLE curriculum, which includes conflict resolution, how we are implementing our guidance curriculum, because these things are already built in the system. So we have to look back to see if there's anything we can do to ensure that our students choose better ways of solving their conflicts. And that we will take on. But initially, our focus is helping them to just make sense of this and to just redouble their efforts, especially as we have students going into their exams in short order.
Amoy Harriet, CVM News.
Thanks, Amoy. Tonight, we're not looking at a single incident. We're looking at a system failure in 2 parts. We start with the first failure, space, the geographic rupture. School violence no longer stops at the gate. The Seaforth case, unfortunately, makes that plain. A dispute that began on a school compound ends in a bus park with a child dead. Violence that begins in school is now spilling into public life. Joining me now, Jacqueline Bryan, social worker and guidance counselor, and Linvern Wright, president of the Jamaica Association of Principals and Vice Principals. We're starting off this evening because what Amoy has laid out is not an abstraction. It's the operational reality that you both work inside every single day. The Education Act focuses on the compound. The Transport Act focuses on the vehicle. Neither focuses on the student in the transport space. Ms. Bryan, to start with you first, Ms. Bryan. A student was killed in a bus park in St. Thomas. That bus park is not a school compound. That killing does not happen during registered school hours. Under your professional mandate as a guidance counselor, are you authorized to respond? Does your duty of care follow the child beyond the gate?
It depends on the situation, because there are times when home visit happens because of behavioral issues. We at Haile Selassie have experienced changes because our school used to be one of those schools where fights happened on a regular basis. And we are part of a program where we have interventions happening in our school, various different kinds of intervention. When a child learns, it makes a difference in how they respond, in how they behave. I can share with you, some years ago, there were a group of young men that were not attending school, not attending class when they do come to school, roam the corridors, and were getting into the challenges. There's an introduction of drumming. And it started with them drumming, and that led to them transforming. I am a proponent of expressive therapy, which excludes the arts, visual arts, performing arts, music, dance, drama, and allowing students to use those tools to transform themselves and transform their life. When they're being exposed to certain things, their mind changes.
That shift in mindset is something that you then see in these children inside the school compound.
And it happens also outside.
Where you will then, as you say, have home visits to be able to support those children where you see that they need additional support, that additional learning. Linvern Wright, I pull you into this conversation though, because your members who manage institutions whose legal boundaries end at the school fence, they have a responsibility. But you're seeing violence move to bus parks and taxi stands. Is it fair to expect a principal to now manage a campus that effectively includes the entire parish transport network in order to keep Jamaica's children safe?
Good evening. A school really needs a network to really manage well. It's one of the reasons you have parent-teachers associations. It's one of the reasons schools seek to try to know bus drivers, and I certainly try to do that. I try to understand who many of the vendors are. And in many instances, much of the information
I'm on the TV.
Much of the information I get to run my school comes from much of the people out there. So running a school is not really just about those persons in the school. The important, you have to get information. The police will tell you that they depend on the society out there to assist them to get things going. So while you are the ones who are in charge directly in moments when you see people, there has got to be a sense of responsibility from other people with whom children come into contact to ensure that there is a, if not a legal, but a moral duty of care when they are in spaces that you occupy as an adult.
That duty of care is certainly something that we want to look at after the break, especially as we have seen instances of violence involving our school-aged children. Stay with us inside Lead Stories Prime's Beyond the Gate.
Watch how them a move, the account a meter help them improve. Take action, use the jump tool. Track your MP cause they work for you. Mind your business, JA with Jump Online.
Let's monitor government at jumpja.org, funded by the European Union.
Hi, I am Candy Pangat.
What a guan. What a guan?
That a guan pa.
What a guan? What a guan?
What a guan? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
That's a guan pa. What a guan?
Brought to you by
Some things are perfect from the start. Smirnoff.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Welcome back to Lead Story Prime and tonight's discussion beyond the school gate. School violence, viral shame, and the system that can't keep up. Linvern Wright, before the break, you're talking to us about the duty of care every adult has when they're in the presence of a child. But we now know that given the statistics shared by the Ministry of Education, about every 3.5 days, we have a new incident between some children inside a school. Horrific figures there, but you're looking at the reality then of inside school having altercations, at the bus park having altercations, at the transport corridor having altercations, spaces that are inside school and outside school. Has your association, the Jamaica Association of Principals and Vice Principals, said there's a space, though you will know the bus men and those around. Maybe every principal can't do that. Maybe every administrator can't do that. Maybe we need legislation around this. Do you believe that legislation we have, like the Child Care and Protection Act, is the legislation that allows for us to protect the children in all these spaces?
I somehow feel you have enough legislation. I mean, these things, and I'm not saying they must happen, but many of these things do happen, and it's not about condoning it. The fact is that legislation cannot resolve every problem we have. There has got to be some kind of social contract and social consciousness around how we treat children, how we deal with violence. I think that much of what we do in our social media spaces, in how sometimes I watch people talk to people in parliament, maybe how many of us sometimes as adults talk to each other. We have got to understand that some things are caught, not necessarily taught. And what happens is that many of these children catch this approach to things. So it has to be violence. You heard that other child saying that I would have done the same thing, coming from another home, coming from another community, I presume. What is happening is that our spaces out there, or social spaces out there, really need some work. You know, there's one famous person who speaks that it is an illusion to believe that the hearts and minds of men and women can be transformed, and I would dare say children, when the social structures that make those hearts sick remain intact and unchanged. The fact is that many of our social structures, or family, or homes, or schools, or churches, the space of buses out there are places that needs to be repaired. And it's not just laws that can do that. It has got to be that we understand many of our obligations to be responsible citizens, to be citizens who care about each other, to be citizens who love each other, and actually have those things for grounding many of the usual relations we have every day.
We're looking at a situation, Ms. Bryan, of Jamaica not seeing something like this for the very first time. Only in March, we had another episode of a child dying as a result of a school altercation, this time Seaforth High, that happened on the school compound, off the school compound, Seaforth High. We have had cases over the years where we have seen children involved in documented cases of teacher-student altercation, violence in community spaces, and the like. When something happens, though, outside of the school compound, not inside, in your direct experience, what actually happens, who calls whom, who takes responsibility, who walks us through the real consequences of what happened. Don't tell me about what the paperwork say, because you and Linvern Wright just say we have enough documentation, we have enough laws. What actually happens when a child is harmed outside of school?
We're called. I just did not answer a call because that's a parent calling me. And you see the time. Parents know that they can call their guidance counselor, and sometimes we have to cut off. But what is the situation that is happening when this parent needs help because they can't cope?
But that's a parent situation. What happens if at a bus park, at somewhere else, some incident takes place? Do other students come and tell the guidance counselor? Do you hear an investigator?
Yes, they do.
What is the reporting status and how does it then work next? What does that duty of care framework look like?
When a student has learned that I have a responsibility to make sure that my space is safe, they will then come and report to us because we're confidential and we will not break certain bounds. What is happening in our country is that that's not my child. That's not happening to my family. So I cannot speak out. I cannot encourage somebody to behave in a proper way. Don't use violence to resolve conflict.
So none of the students come to you because they feel that they should not speak out?
Quite a number of them.
So they do come to you?
The informal culture, some of them do come to us and speak to us about what they have seen, what they have heard. And some of them respond in the way that young lady says that I would take up a knife.
What's the reporting mechanism after that? You're made aware that some fight took place at a taxi stand. What happens next? With 2 students from your institution, what happens next?
We call them in. We try to restorative justice to find a way to solve the problem. Because there's a diversion program also, which is what he was speaking about in terms of the legislation that are there. There are diversion programs where students who are in certain kind of situation don't need to have to go into the court system.
And we've had discussion about the Child Diversion Act currently before the Joint Select Committee of Parliament right now. So we have these things in place.
And we try to utilize them. And it's important to understand that when our society encourages you, man for dead culture, woman for dead culture, we need to speak out against these lyrics that are coming into our music. We need to speak about those who are on social media who unalive people verbally. And it is an encouraged behavior.
So this is the caught behavior that you're talking about, that Linvern Wright has spoken to, that even if they're not taught this in the home, they see this and attempt to replicate this behavior in spaces.
Because it's okay to do that. You heard the young lady? You heard the young lady make the comment that we are doing this in front of our friends to look good, to gain stripes. And our young people is being taught more by, a lot of them are not watching television, they're watching TikTok, Snapchat. And I say this all the time, they tell me that Facebook is for old people. Instagram.
So they're seeing these things in spaces then that encourage behavior, and the publication of these things, something that we're going to be talking about in a few moments, might also lead to copycats and replicated behavior. But Linvern Wright, yesterday we were having this conversation, this very conversation about children and information placed online, and we were speaking with the Parliamentary Secretary in the Education Ministry, Marlon Wright, and the head of Marlon Morgan, thank you so much, and speaking with the head of safety in schools, Richard Troop, and having that conversation, Mr. Wright, in that it was raised, a Safe Schools program, but it doesn't cover the space where this student was killed. This is outside of the physical plant of the school, outside of the school resource officers. Should it? And if the ministry were to say to you, Linvern Wright, and to your association, let's expand it tomorrow, do the schools have the human and financial resources to execute that?
No, we don't.
And you see a huge part of it, Jody, that we really have to pay attention to. This is not about schools. I mean, you want to know your child is safe when they are in schools. I don't know if many of my colleagues will tell you. There's one friend of mine who is a teacher who one day he said, you know, for him it was so overwhelming, and he says, I am of the view that if you're spending $100 on education, $99 is to tell children to behave themselves. It is tough in schools. It is tough with the kind of cauldron of different things that come really to you in school to really deal with. Sometimes as a principal, you spend so much time just trying to out fires that actually started home, that actually started on the road yesterday. The important thing is that you have to be alert, but many of these things you won't ever be able to just put out like that. I mean, when I look at that situation, I don't know what transpired at the school. I try to get to my colleague. But the fact is that really what does a school do when something like that happens?
Well, a school is aware that something has happened on the school compound. When an altercation moves from the school compound outside or moves from outside into the school compound, at school there is a clear duty. But when someone takes some grievance off the school compound, there seems to be a gap with who takes care of them, who's responsible. You're not yet at your parents, you're not at school. Who is then responsible?
That becomes the responsibility of law enforcement. Police becomes involved. In those spaces, police really should be there. But sometimes police cannot be there all the time. One of the things we have to understand is that we depend on people's sense of self-respect and responsibility and social responsibility and care for each other. There's no society in which the laws can take care of every kind of behavior. None. What you depend on in your citizens is that you hope that your homes and your schools and churches and all these social institutions actually come together to help people to understand that these are the acceptable behaviors, these are the unacceptable behaviors, and you would reinforce in social media, reinforce on TV, you reinforce in your plays that people watch, in the books that people read, on the buses, all the social spaces, that this is what we believe as a society. Truth is that there are so many things about our society that have broken down, and I don't know that we have spent enough time really trying to handle many of those things and dealing with them in ways we ought to.
Let me just end with you, Ms. Bryan. If there's something that you could change about how we protect our children as they make their way outside of the school to their homes now, something that allows for us not to have the devastating story that we do of a Seaforth High student, something that we learned about while speaking with the parliamentary secretary about the case that happened before at Jamaica College, a video that went viral online, something that we'll be talking about the consequences of that in a moment. They seem to be happening back to back. How do we protect our children as they attempt to go home, they leave, they do something like this, making sure they go home to their parents?
As individuals, we need to realize that we, as adults, that every child should, the village raising the child, we need to step in. We're so busy, trying to survive some of the time, and when we see something, we don't take the time to speak to our young people. And sometimes it's a tone that you use also that makes a difference in how you speak to them. I'm not going to do that because that's not my child. And not my business. Let me leave it alone. That's the stand that a lot of us has taken. And that is why it's escalating in the way that it's escalating.
So get more involved. Every person has a responsibility. Lynn Vern Wright talked about that duty of care that every single person has. Police officers can't be everywhere. Everybody then should see protecting our children as our responsibility. We'll take a break here inside Lead Story Prime as we discuss Beyond the Gates. Because when something happens on or off the school compound, it also has a time component, not just geographic. Because when it is recorded and then shared, that video lives on forever. What are the consequences on our children? Thanks so much, Jacqueline Bryan, social worker and guidance counselor, and Lynn Vern Wright, president of the Jamaica Association of Principals and Vice Principals, on this half of the show. Incredibly important for us to take responsibility. But next, are you responsible online as well? We'll talk about that next inside Lead Story Prime.
your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan, with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8:30.
Change does not happen overnight. It takes vision, commitment, and courage to reform.
So we created a number of executive agencies, which I believe, and I can say, having left this Temporal, was one of the most successful initiatives undertaken in the reform process.
But transformation isn't easy.
We found in several ministries, agencies, and departments, you had square pegs in round holes.
You could almost say that public sector transformation is not a JLP policy, it's not a PNP policy. It is national policy.
There was political willingness, there was bipartisan support for going through with the reforms, there was societal support, a lot of societal sacrifices. People of Jamaica made a lot of sacrifices. And businesses, the private sector, everybody was engaged in this journey.
We want to continue to reform the public sector, to allow the public sector to provide its services to the Jamaican people, provide services to the private sector, and the idea is that those services must be more accessible. Those services must be more affordable. Those services must be faster. They must be more personable and comfortable for the citizen.
Watch Building a Better Public Sector, a 4-part docuseries right here on CVM, commencing April 5 and aired every Sunday in April at 3 p.m. Brought to you by the Transformation Implementation.
Joining me now for the second half of tonight's program, Beyond the Gate, school violence, viral shame, and the system that cannot keep up. We have in studio with us Chukwemeka Cameron, privacy practitioner, and in a few moments we'll be joined by clinical psychologist Georgia Rose. We're doing that because the first half of this program established where the system's geographic jurisdiction ends. At school. School fence? We're done. However, there's a second, the temporal rupture that we're looking at. Because violence no longer ends when, unfortunately, the incident ends. You beat somebody up for 2 minutes, the video lives on forever. And the video becomes a second incident. It is shared, it is replayed. And the child does not just experience the moment because it's preserved. The child lives with it indefinitely. This half asks a harder question. It's an invisible question. What happens when a child is harmed? And it's not just physical, and it's done in a way that is permanent, digital, and completely outside the reach of every protective mechanism Jamaica has built. Chuck Cameron, I start with you first, because Jamaica's Data Protection Act 2020 contains a right to erasure. A child appears in a viral video shared without their consent and is circulating on TikTok, WhatsApp, Instagram. Can that child today under Jamaican law compel those platforms to remove that content? Yes or no? And then tell us why.
I don't think that's where I want to start. The reason I don't want to start there is because they are not the only publishers of content that are exposing the children to harm. In this circumstance, you have several data controllers. You have the school boards, you have media houses, you have the Ministry of Education. For those persons who did not see any viral video, when a media house, or for example, let's look at the school board, who described the age of the child, where the child lives, and what grade the child is in, one can discern who that child is unknowingly. So even though you may not have seen the video, you may have heard, and the same school board or the same media house who use those general terms is perpetuating the same harm that may befall the child. Let's look at the specific, and correct me if I'm wrong, in one circumstance, I think the school board published that the child who was beaten admitted to stealing these
and
items.
This is coming out of Jamaica College, the school board now issuing a statement on what took place or rather was shared virally on Saturday. The school board issuing a release yesterday on this. And yes, they did in fact, we spoke with the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Marlon Morgan, as well as the person who is the head of safety in schools. He told us live yesterday on air that the child had admitted to stealing, and that was a context within which this fight took place. And then the press release from Jamaica College also said the same, yes.
So that in itself is unfortunate.
The characterization of what has taken place?
Correct. So he admits to a criminal offense. That by itself is protected under the Data Protection Act. You don't publish criminal-related information in relation to an individual, much less a child. So we have to, it is much wider than social media over there in foreign. How can we delete that information? No. Who are the data controllers? Who does our law currently hold accountable? And are they aware of their responsibilities to these children in these circumstances?
I think you highlighted such an important point, because there is quite a lot of responsibility for these various sets of people. Every step along the way requires careful handling of data, careful sharing of information, especially when it comes to minors. But unfortunately, some of the cases that we see, the school finds out afterwards, the school board finds out afterwards, the Education Ministry finds out afterwards. The Education Ministry, in the case of the viral Jamaica College video, indicated that having now been made aware of the video, that is, the video is published and now is widely distributed, that is when an investigation then was triggered. In those circumstances where the video already has made the rounds, people have already seen it and commented, as we have seen on social media, this child is placed in the spotlight without their consent, and all the other children who are in this video as well are placed in the spotlight without their consent. What happens if 20 years from now, this one moment, 56 seconds of a video, is not what they want to have following them for the rest of their life?
So, can the law erase it in these easily chased content and make it disappear?
Especially on social media platforms like TikTok, WhatsApp, Instagram, where these things do get widely shared.
That is a tall order and very challenging. However, do citizens of Jamaica, does you and I, do we have choices when we click that button? Yes, we do. The law can punish. The law can issue compensation, but citizens can prevent this harm. We really need to appreciate the harm that we are doing to all the children in all the two scenarios, both the victims and the accused. All of these were children. I heard when I was waiting to come on air, the child saying, I would have done the same thing in terms of gotten a knife. But that's a question mark. Could her voice have been disguised? Why all the people in her community can recognize her voice? That's considered
and so the protection of children in each step of this way then is certainly something that we have to be much more mindful of and much more aware of, especially when dealing with sensitive topics like these. Georgia Rose, I pull you in here. You're with us, acting as a clinical psychologist, but also helping us understand the consequences to these children. Minors, Chukwemeka Cameron has made it very clear, have rights, but not only that, we have higher protection standards for them, making sure that we do more and we go above and beyond, making sure that we don't harm them anymore. But unfortunately, when something goes online, Georgia Rose, something is shared online, something makes its way to all sorts of people, your grandmother, church sister, your cousin in foreign gets to see a video like this. Does this change a child? What does it do to a person? How does it impact them now having this information, one of the most difficult times of their lives, whether they're a victim or a perpetrator as a child? What does it do to them?
Impact is multifaceted, and I don't know if a single statement can completely explain the long-term effects of having your misdeeds, your mistakes, your errors, your acts of bad judgment being broadcast to everyone. One of the thoughts I think we have to hold is, are these actions new? Is school violence and violence amongst school-age children a new factor in our society? I don't think so. I think what is different is that we now have the space of a very active and robust media communication space. So if you do something and it is captured, the virility with which it can be shared is massive and at lightning speed. And you made an excellent point. It exists for years and years to come. We don't know what the future holds. So when you have made an error, whatever is the cause or the genesis of that error, and it is stored and disseminated to everyone, oftentimes without any other context, I'm quite sure that it makes the process of recovery, healing, accountability that much more difficult. And one of the questions we have to ask ourselves as a society and as caregivers and leaders of our children or stewards of our children, do we just want to punish or do we want to rehabilitate? Because the evidence is there. Punishment is highly unsuccessful in the long term. There has to be a targeted approach to discipline. And the difference between discipline and punishment is in the moment. It does not necessarily rectify the root of the behavior. And that therefore means that there is a significant likelihood that the behaviors may reoccur. What is it that is taking place that entices our children into acts of such extreme aggression?
So the violence is one thing, but the recording of the violence as well, the memorializing it, putting it now in this place where you can go back and relive the experience if you're an aggressor, or relieve the shame if you are the victim. Is that something as well that leaves the child? Because there is some research that we have seen that says it takes around 18 months for a child's nervous system after something like this goes and is being shared to level out once again. And that takes much longer if it becomes a viral video going around now to all who they may never have met, with the suspicion in their mind that somebody meets them, knowing them now from this video. Is that something that you see Jamaicans talking about as they quickly share and talk about videos, especially with children in fights?
Exactly, and it varies from child to child. Each child has different coping capacities and different supportive networks. And you make an excellent point. 18 months from when? 18 months from the last time the video was shared, or the incident was discussed, or the punishment was enacted, or 18 months from the first impact. So once again, there's so many other factors that you have to take into consideration. Some children are going to struggle much longer than others to recover from it. And some of us live in spaces that don't allow us to recover from it because it is consistently and constantly restated, not with an aim to help us to heal and to get better and to say, where did I go wrong? What could I have done different? What are the other alternatives to my action? But just to say, I'm at fault, I'm a bad person. And once again, is that creating an individual that is going to make meaningful contribution to the society in the long run? Or are we creating an individual that is more fractured, more damaged, and more likely to end up in our mental health services or our penal services? And who suffers? The wider society does.
I think that's important. We'll take a quick break then as we go to our final segment inside Lead Story Prime Beyond the Gate.
Change does not happen overnight. It takes vision, commitment, and courage to reform.
So we created a number of executive agencies, which I believe, and I can say, having left this Temporal, was one of the most successful initiatives undertaken in the reform process.
But transformation isn't easy.
We found in several ministries, agencies, and departments, you had square pegs in round holes.
You could almost say that public sector transformation is not a GLP policy, it's not a PNP policy. It is national policy.
There was political willingness, there was bipartisan support for going through with the reforms, there was societal support, a lot of societal sacrifices. People of Jamaica made a lot of sacrifices. And businesses, the private sector, everybody was engaged in this journey.
We want to continue to reform the public sector, to allow the public sector to provide its services to the Jamaican people, provide services to the private sector. And the idea is that those services must be more accessible. Those services must be more affordable. Those services must be faster. They must be more personable and comfortable for the citizen.
Watch Building a Better Public Sector, a 4-part docuseries right here on CVM, commencing April 5 and aired every Sunday in April at 3 p.m. Brought to you by the Transformation Implementing.
We're in the final segment of Beyond the Gate: school violence, viral shame, and the system that cannot keep up. And I want answers that the country can act on from the both of you now. You tell me the consequences, you've told us the harm. Help us now figure out what we do next. Chuck Cameron, if a teacher films a student, or a student films a teacher, or on a school grounds, and that footage is shared online, could be a fight, and we've had teacher-student fights, teacher-teacher fights, we've had altercations and the like. Has anybody committed an offense under Jamaican law? What's the offense and what's the penalty for doing something like that?
Right, so on the face of it, you are clearly breaching the Data Protection Act. Once you share, so there have been decisions handed down by supervisory authorities that say once you share information on a social media platform, it goes beyond just domestic use, because usually if you share something between a friend or two friends, you don't fall under the Data Protection Act. But once you publish it to a large number of persons, it is now governed by the Data Protection Act. So publishing data without any lawful basis and can, more importantly, do harm in relation to an individual is an offense under the Data Protection Act. And there is criminal sanction and civil sanctions, but that's not the only law that comes into play. You also have the Child Care and Protection Act. If you were to consider Section 44 and Section 45 that speak to publishing information around a child in relation to proceedings, it is a legal question, when do proceedings start? But once the police start investigating what could be a criminal offense, that is a commencement of proceedings. So for any individual or entity to publish information that could identify a child that is involved in a proceedings is also a criminal offense under the Child Care and Protection Act. So we do have, in my mind, robust laws in place that have teeth, that criminalizes a person that published the information initially and those individuals that shared the information.
Have we seen any prosecutions? Have we seen people share viral videos, they send information around, though we have this bit of legislative architecture, have we seen now it actually used now to sanction individuals, saying to them, this is in fact wrong, don't do it again, I'm making you an example, so others will learn to stop?
Two elements. The first thing, have criminal complaints been made? Are we aware that we have rights over our information and what your image, your voice? Do we understand that? So that's the first issue. The more substantive issue, however, from the Office of the Information Commissioner, who has direct purview over this legislation.
And that's the Data Protection Act.
Correct.
Yes.
Her powers have not been enforced or enacted as yet to enforce the law. But one is not prevented from making a complaint to the police. One is not, you are not prevented from doing so.
Cybercrimes Act, misuse of electronic devices. Is that something that somebody could go to the police and talk to them about?
Yes, but you have to demonstrate that you had the intent to cause harm.
Okay.
So that is where a child doing it may not necessarily have the intent to cause harm, but they don't fall outside of the Data Protection Act. And it's not only children sharing this type of information
it's
as
the
well.
adults as well, and those who want to glorify or discuss, if it was my child, here is what I would do. Let me pull you in here, Georgia Rose, because Chukwemeka Cameron just made that statement. It doesn't matter if you intended to cause harm, though, if harm is caused. You might not be able to use one piece of legislation, the Cybercrimes Act, but if you are somebody who's been caught on camera, if you're somebody, whether it is the victim or the perpetrator, studies say that 18 months, they're still affected, they're still bothered. This moment now is captured online. Do we have the kind of help and support to help them with the sort of emotional consequences, especially as they're growing, they're teenagers, they have all sorts of hormonal changes, their prefrontal cortex isn't fully settled. They have the ability to do things, but without the common sense that goes along with it. Do we have the infrastructure here in Jamaica to protect them, especially as the way that we seem to deal with these incidents, to send physical teams to the school when this incident has already gone viral?
We do have systems in place. We have a very robust child and adolescent mental health service across the entire island, and we already have pre-existing adult mental health services. And there are a lot of community-based services that are out there that our schools can access, that our families or communities can access. Our guidance and counseling unit is also very active and engaged. I think we have to recognize that it's not a one-pronged impact, or one-pronged intervention as it relates to these types of incidents. We have to hold people accountable. We have to recognize that there are consequences for our clicks and our types and our reposts. And until that occurs, I don't think it really cements itself well for people to appreciate how it affects us. I know that there was a school bus tour that was going on around with our local social media personalities that tried to speak to our students about using social media wisely. And if those things have been disrupted or discontinued, those are opportunities and avenues, because we have to meet our children where they are. It matters not whether or not we engage in social media or we like social media. Social media is very much a part of the landscape of our children and our adolescents and even our adults. So we have to meet our kids where they are, use the language that they use, engage them and engender them in ways that make sense to them, help them to appreciate and understand that, listen, we want you to have your freedom. They're getting into the vlogging and the blogging, and they want to be in these spaces, and they want the notoriety that comes with it, or the perceived notoriety that comes with it. But for them to understand what is their responsibility as they interact with these spaces. And for those individuals or children or adolescents or adults that have been affected by things that are shared and posted in the wider space, the wider media space, there are many avenues that you can reach out to help you navigate the complexity of feelings and emotions that one must go through if they've had such an experience.
To you both, as we close, first to you, Georgia Rose, we are raising a generation of Jamaican children in now the unerasable era. Every video in the child that you put up on TikTok, every picture that you put up on Instagram for your child, whether or not they've agreed to it or not, everything is out there. Their child is on record permanently. What's the single most urgent thing you think that Jamaica should do before another child is harmed with this knowing or unknowing harm? It still matters. What's one thing that you think they should do? And then I close off with Chuck Cameron giving us his one.
I think every parent and caregiver has to recognize that we have an undeniable responsibility to speak with our children, to have positions and standards as a family, as an individual, where we are educating our kids. Because I think so often we take it for granted that they should know. And Jamaican will say, but you must have sense, you must know. I want to say step away, step back from that. We need to go back to a time where we are sitting and having conversations with our children about the dangers of their public actions and how those things can be captured, misinterpreted, and used against them for time and time to come. And I want to say to parents, if your child has had an error in judgment and exposed themselves or have been exposed in such a way that might prove deleterious to them, that we offer them our support, that we give them grace, and that we engage the specialists, the counselors, the therapists, the community members who are trained in these things to help them and us navigate it. Don't leave them alone. Don't shoot them. Don't give up on them.
I think that's so important. There's a parent right now who, what kind of thing is this without the tools that you've just given them? And your tools now better enable them to think, step back, and give their child grace. Chukwemeka Cameron, before we go, what's one thing that you think we could do in this unerasable era to protect our children?
The adults in the room, namely the institutions, the school boards, the teachers, need to demonstrate that they understand the harm that they can cause to children by how they process their personal data. So let's start with the schools implementing data protection policies. Let's start with the schools appointing data protection officers that the law requires. Because if adults don't appreciate the harm that may flow from a post, how must a child understand it? So the adults in the room who have the legal obligation to take care of children, follow the law. That's all we're asking.
Follow the law and give them grace. Thanks so much to Chukwemeka Cameron, privacy practitioner, for joining us here in studio, and Georgia Rose, senior clinical psychologist on Zoom within the Western region. You're here talking to us. Thank you so very much for joining us inside Lead Story Prime. Here's my take. There's a generation of Jamaican children who will never know what it means to have an offline past. Every fight, every humiliation, every moment of violation, captured, shared, indexed. And under the law as it stands tonight, unreachable if it's a foreign set of people who have that data as well. Now, we have a Data Protection Act. Chukwemeka Cameron spoke about its powers, but it can't reach TikTok. We have a Child Care and Protection Act that doesn't have the words digital harm in there. Not yet, at least. We have a Cybercrimes Act with no prosecution on record for sharing a child's image without consent. Not sexual images, just you putting up your picnic picture is not yours to put up. We have a Safe Schools program whose jurisdiction ends at the gate while our children are being bullied and killed in bus parks. The system was built for a world that no longer exists. The geographic boundary of institutional responsibility was always a fiction. Violence never respected it. But we wrote it into law and called it a framework. The temporal boundary, the idea that an incident ends when it ends, is now permanently broken. A video posted today is evidence tomorrow, and currency next year to chat somebody, and a weapon a decade from now to keep them away from good work. Canada legislated, the United Kingdom legislated, Trinidad moved its institutional framework closer to where children actually are. Jamaica has a choice. We can continue to send guidance counselors to compounds that the violence has already left. We can continue to cite a Data Protection Act that cannot compel a single platform to remove a single frame of a child in distress. Or we can decide that this generation, the first generation with no offline past, deserves a law written for the world they actually live in. The gate is not the boundary. The screen is not the boundary. The child is the boundary. And until the country legislates from that principle, the system will keep failing and we'll keep covering it. That is the story. I'm Jodianne Quarry, and on behalf of the entire CVM production team, thank you for watching Lead Story Prime. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope you stay safe. Up next, Fan Central.